Use promo code MKSummer to get free shipping on all our orders on our Teespring store. Once again, that's code MKSummer until the end of August to get free shipping on all your orders.
Patrick, guess what came in the mail today?
Oh, what?
This.
Stick it in!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the M&K Productions Podcast. I'm your host, Mac, from the M side of the M&K, and I'm joined here as usual by my K side, Kristen, Miss Flamingo. How are you doing today, Kristen?
Hello. It's a big day on the podcast because we're talking Nolan, and I'm excited to be here. How you doing?
Can't complain. Can't complain at all.
We aren't alone today because we have a guest who is returning since we last had him on to discuss not Yes, but Nope, the Jordan Peele movie that came out last year. I'm sorry, I had to be a little corny. I know our guest is shaking his head, but it's the one and only Dom from Talking TV.
No. I wasn't shaking my head at the joke. I was shaking my head at the fact that it's been a year since I've been on this podcast.
I was gonna say that was literally a year. That was a year ago.
I know,
last year.
I was about to leave, and I was like, I hadn't seen Nope yet, and you guys were just talking about it. And I was like, holy shit, that's
Matt, did I reach out to you about potentially coming on to my podcast and talking about that? I don't remember if I did, because I was reaching out to a bunch of people. They're like, no. It was weird, because I remember when that came out, like, nobody wanted to see it. And I was like,
I remember
why?
seeing it opening weekend. I remember seeing it opening weekend, but the time you invited me, I was like, I was already going to see it like that time.
Right. Oh, I remember now. Yes, you were seeing it the day that I was recording it.
Yeah.
We didn't I didn't watch it until we got it DVD on sale, and then it premiered on Peacock, so me and my mom watched it and we loved it. So I can see why some people were like, some of Jordan Peele's weaker stuff, but it's the characters. But Dom, what have you been up to, man? Like, what have you been doing with your channel and your podcast?
You know me. I'm always watching stuff. I'm always watching shows. I'm always watching movies, if not something new. I've actually been playing a little bit of catch up this summer in terms of my TV watching for some shows that I missed. I recently finished White Lotus season 2, which I liked exponentially more than the first season. I said this in my review. I felt like this second season actually got to the heart of what the first season and the show overall is trying to say. I like the location better. I like the cast much better this time around. I think the comedy was a lot more consistent. I think the storytelling was a lot more consistent. The first season I still have a lot of problems with. I still don't think it's as good as everybody makes it out to be. And I also recently got into I'm shocked myself, a Netflix show, which I've been talking shit about Netflix since before it was popular to talk shit about Netflix. And now I'm watching one of their few last good original shows. I was literally going down the map of their 1 to 2 good original shows that they've had really since their inception in 2013. And I missed, I think I only missed a few, and I've caught up on my majority of them. And I think there's only like 3 of them that are left still going on, because after Ozark ended last year, it's just Stranger Things, The Witcher, which is probably going to wrap up soon once they're done with Cavill, as we could pretty much figure out, and Cobra Kai, which only has 1 more season before it gets wrapped up. I mean, you have Arcane, yet another first season that I'm waiting for a second season on. Who the hell knows when we're getting that? But I am surprised myself. I started watching Sex Education, and actually I'm really enjoying it. I'm already almost 6 episodes into the first season. I'm really enjoying it a lot. But I didn't realize, that's the thing, I didn't realize it was a British show. And I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense, because Netflix is partnering with people who actually know how to make good television. That would explain
why the British culture, I think, too. So that's mostly you've been watching, like anything else?
Well, I mean, obviously I've still been, keeping up with the new movies per week, what's it called? The thing is that we got a big content dump that last weekend of June, right? Because we had, like, for the majority of June, it was like, I've been talking about this with Luke a lot on my podcast, but this summer really has been the return of the movie. So it's like, for the most part, we've gotten movies like brand new, big blockbusters that people are actually into, that are actually talking about, that are actually actively engaged in almost every week of the summer, right. Starting back in, like I said, we had a Marvel movie the first weekend of May that people actually were into and talked about with Guardians 3. We got a Fast and the Furious movie. Across the Spider-Verse was a phenomenon. We got a new Transformers movie, The Flash. Say what you will about the quality and everything else, but that movie had its moment. And then the last week of June, we had a big content dump. We had the double release of Asteroid City and No Hard Feelings. I feel like both of which were they got their kind of moment in the sun. You had the Wes Anderson heads who came out for Asteroid City, and then No Hard Feelings. People were just shocked that they got a rated R comedy in theaters. You know, that was the biggest surprise. But that weekend, you had the premiere of season 3 of The Witcher and the new season of Black Mirror and season 2 of The Bear. And I believe that was also coincided with when The Idol was really heating up, even though that had premiered back at the beginning of June. So we got this big TV dump at the end of June. And then I feel like things have kind of cooled off in July, but like it's still been a lot of content that like, you know, that now that people are into. You know, you have Indiana Jones, you had a new Mission Impossible movie, you had another rated R comedy movie that had like a brief moment in the sun with Joyride. But it feels like, aside from what we're about to talk about in tonight's podcast, you know, obviously we had the big summer event released this past weekend with Oppenheimer and Barbie, but we've also got now this random movie that came out of nowhere, this Sound of Freedom movie, which like the story behind this movie is insane and makes it sound like this crazy conspiracy theorist movie. And then you watch it, and I think the biggest surprise is that it's a movie that is appealing to fundamentalist Christians, that is actually good and not just good, but it's about a subject area that like really should be being talked about. You know, it's always tough because it's like, okay, I'm not going to exactly blame Hollywood for turning this down, considering that it's a pretty tough sell to sell a movie. Oh yeah, come and see the new summer blockbuster about saving children from child trafficking. Yes, that is going to be the big summer movie of a summer movie that everyone's going to want to take their kids to, you know? But like the fact that the movie is doing pretty well, I feel like is worth talking about and acknowledging, you know? So I will say it's been an interesting summer. It's been a fun summer just in my own personal life. You know, I've actually like, this is the first summer that I've had since I was 15 to actually like take a step back and enjoy myself. And I've been having fun. You know, you probably are wondering, you know, people who are only listening to the audio are not going to know what I'm talking about, but I'm wearing a hat with a Neon logo on it for the independent studio Neon, because I actually managed to get a letterbox screening invite to in collaboration with Neon for the restored version of Old Boy, the 2003 Park Chan-wook one, for the movie's 20th anniversary, which is actually this year. And that was awesome. Like I said, I this is my first year going back to Tribeca Film Festival since 2019. So that was a lot of fun. And it was it was an awesome Tribeca Film Festival.
And we both got to participate, because I mentioned 2 podcasts ago that I got to participate in it. And it was a good year, I must say.
Yeah, it really was. A lot of good movies. You saw way more movies than me, but I still had a blast and enjoyed every single movie that I watched, which I can't say that I've ever had that experience with a festival. You know, like I'll admit, festival going is still a relatively new thing for me. I'm mostly restricted to online virtual screenings because of my status and my my location for the last couple of years. But yeah, this one, it was a really fun one. I really had a lot of fun with it. Enjoyed every single movie that I saw. Would heavily recommend movies like The Line, like Shortcomings, like Leroy in particular. I really enjoyed those. Yeah, and I'm also trying to get tickets to New York Film Festival, you know, because that's right there. You know, I know it's kind of like one of the little guys, not as big as like Venice or Toronto, but you know, considering that it's right in my neck of the woods,
and
it's
we're
still
getting
New York,
a premiere
but
of Sofia Coppola's movie. So,
but of course, the
major.
question will be if we actually get any stars to promote them, because other than that, yeah, I was planning on watching Priscilla, and I was planning on watching May December, and I was planning on watching Killers of the Flower Moon if it premiered there, and a whole bunch of others that were hopefully going to premiere there as well. You know, I don't know if Saltburn will be going there, but if I get a chance to do an early screening of that, I will absolutely want to do that, especially since that got a release date. But yeah, it's been a good summer, honestly. I've been having a lot of fun. It really, like Luke and I have been saying it all summer, but I really do stand by the statement that the movies are back.
Yeah, that's great. I'm happy you are doing well and you're seeing great movies. Other than that, Mac, do you want to discuss what you've been watching lately before we dive into today's topic?
Absolutely nothing. No, I have well, at the time of this recording, it's not out yet. I will be watching the Twisted Metal series on the 27th when it comes out, because I'm morbidly curious. I want to see Sweet Tooth singing about the thong song. That'll be funny. I've been watching this new anime on Netflix. It's called Zom 100, where this guy, he works at a marketing and advertising firm, and a zombie apocalypse starts, and he makes a bucket list of everything he wants to do. And his first thing on the bucket list was to quit his job, because he was so excited, like, I don't have to go to work today. I'm like, God, I feel that on a spiritual level.
Oh man.
What else?
Well, if he's at a marketing firm, how would he be able to tell the difference between the zombies and his employees?
Well, he could tell because he went to his boss who was an affair with like a girl he likes, and he quit, and the boss fell out the window. It was kind of funny, but
what?
You gotta watch it. It's really funny. Besides those two, nothing really a lot. Just a lot of rewatching stuff. And
what are you rewatching? Anything good?
Well, just like those two. That's it.
Oh, there's also. Oh, okay.
He said nothing, and he meant nothing.
Yeah.
Anything? I really don't really watch. I just rewatch a lot of stuff. I mean, I've been rewatching the original Clone High because the new Clone High sucks dick.
What a surprise! What a surprise!
I've been watching a little bit of Hell. I've been watching Hell's Kitchen again.
I remember when we were discussing just one-on-one, you and I remember you've been on that binge.
I don't know. It's just something with Hell's Kitchen is like every time you go back in there, it's either gets me hungry or it just gets me like.
It's that thing of the idea of the comfort food. You got comfort food and you got a comfort show.
And it's funny too because Hell's Kitchen is actually opening a restaurant in Foxwoods.
Oh yeah, that's not.
So I'll probably maybe go out there.
You should go out there, celebrate something.
Well, might be getting my car. Well, most likely the next time we post the episode, I may have a car by then.
Oh, so, go there. You can drive there.
Yeah, yes, but anything else, I've just been mostly just rewatching and everything. I really I guess the only new thing that's like maybe a little bit. I've been watching Craig of the Creek on Max since they added new episodes. I love Craig of the Creek on Cartoon Network. Also, shout out to the Cartoon Network Studios closing in Burbank. They're open since 2009. But yeah, that's what I've been watching.
Mac, you'll appreciate this. In terms of the rewatch stuff, I've been rewatching a lot of cartoons from when I was a kid. I just recently finished rewatching Teen Titans season 3.
Oh my gosh, I remember Teen Titans.
I've been getting. What else have I been watching? I've been getting into the Boondocks more so. I just watched 2 episodes earlier today with my friend. That shows. Listen. That show is like.
Who told you can watch the Boondocks?
Oh, I'm sorry.
God.
I didn't realize.
I
didn't realize I needed a. I'm sorry.
You had to get a permission slip.
I didn't realize I needed the pass to watch that. No, that show is high art. Like people say that, like, oh, it's satire. Nah, that show is high art. Like
that's okay. Art. This podcast is 100% Black approved.
Awesome,
Black approved this.
Okay,
but
good.
no,
in fairness, I kind of already got the pass when I did a background extra gig on Power Book 2. I'm pretty sure that already got me my card. But giving me the double card slip there.
I love Boondocks so much.
It's so good.
I remember
it's so
my
fucking
stepbrother.
Good.
The first episode of Boondocks I ever watched was season 3, and this was like 2009. Was I'd seen it before, but I just didn't know it. This is the first time I can formulate memories. It was the Lamilton Tayshaun episode where he's like, I like to do bad things. I smoke with cigarettes with my friend. It was based on the real kid. He was like, it became like, it was a parody of both Juice and Halloween. And that's the funniest part. You just hear
I watched the first. I've been just watching chronologically through the first season, and I watched the 2 episodes today. The one was with the Stinkmeyer one where he fights Grandpa.
Meter, yeah.
The Stinkmeyer, yeah, the first one, and then I watched the one right after that with the 2 white guys who were voiced respectively by Charlie Murphy and Samuel L. Jackson when they're trying to go to find the killer, and they end up shooting up the store and get praised as heroes for it.
Ed Wetzler and Jim Rummy, because what I love about that is like it's the first off of like is the joke of like Ed's rich, so they get away with it. But it's like the part in the story
Ed the third.
And the part of the story that makes it funnier is that first of all, Samuel L. Jackson just talking to a white guy. It's like
no, not even just Samuel L. Jackson to a white guy. Samuel L. Jackson talking to a white guy and just repeating his fucking his bit from Pulp Fiction, like word for word. Like they didn't even try to alter it.
The funniest joke in that episode was when they were having a shootout and the cop was shot and he's like, "Hey, what's your name?" My name's Frank. Okay, Fred.
Okay,
you're
Frank.
Not going to die.
He fucked up the name too.
He's like, you're not going to die in vain. He's actually,
it's like, okay. I'm okay. It's like, okay, well, you're not going to be mortally. Well, you will not be mortally wounded in vain.
And he's actually, and then freaking, I miss Charlie Murphy so much. He goes like, "You hear that, you sweaty bastards? Freddy ain't dead.
Oh my gosh!
Freddy said, bring it on, bitch." And he just like, bring it.
Rest in peace to an icon, to Charlie Murphy. That was great.
Kristen, you need to watch.
Oh, it's good. And I'm also considering going back and rewatching Beast Wars because Rise of the Beast, dude. I'm telling you, listen. I saw that movie like 2 months ago. I just rewatched it with my friend. I showed it to my friend. And listen, let me tell you, when I heard Primal in that movie, in All Glorious is voiced by Primal, the movie I thought was just okay. I thought it was just okay. But the Maximal bits of that, when I heard Primal say maximize, dude, I almost shit a brick. I was damn near ready to stand up and start cheering. I'm like, that's fucking right. And now I'm tempted to just go back and rewatch Beast Wars. I've watched that show 3 times, and it just gets better every single time I watch it. Fuck what the haters say about the CG.
Okay, so let me see, because I'm going to jump in now with what I've been watching. So I've watched only 2 movies recently. like at home, besides seeing Barbie, that goes along with today's subject. We're not discussing Barbie, but it does involve the trending topic. But I saw Barbie. At home, I watched Glitch, The Rise and Fall of HQ Trivia. I never played HQ, but I knew the fascination of it. So I was like, why? Like when I was younger, when this game came out, like I couldn't understand the hype for it, of like wanting to win a small amount of money. And I was like, you're in this agonizing round of questions. I didn't want to do it. I know some people who did it, but I didn't do it. Did you guys play HQ?
No, I was always a Sporkle guy, if memory serves.
What is that?
Sporkle's like another one of those online.
Okay.
It like you can do like trivia quizzes, but it's like you have to. It's not multiple choice. You have to like type in the answers, and then it automatically gives it to you. And I almost always did like movie stuff. That's actually like kind of like that's like in my pre-movie trivia days where I would just like go on and like I would do like match the movies with the poster title and like name this name like all the actors from this certain movie and like this actor's filmography, stuff like that.
Oh, but those games are cute and fun. Mac, did you play HQ?
What's HQ?
Enough said.
No, what is that?
Oh, it was like a trivia game that you played on your phone and you would win money. So like the prize was like $1,000.
No, I never heard of that.
And they would like have like all these winners. Sometimes they would play like have 100,000 people and eventually get up to like people got like so invested with this game. Like the game had like basically like 1 million people playing at one point, and you were eliminated if you got the question wrong. I think there were like 11 rounds, and if you failed the first like any of the times, like you could get all the way to the end, and if you get the last question wrong, you were out. But if you made it through all the questions remaining that were left, they would divide the how many players were like the winners, and you could win something like $5.
Okay. Wait, now that you say, okay, I think I'm vaguely remembering that
I've
now.
never heard of that unless they had a terrible ad. It's like, oh man, I forgot my entire wallet at home. Don't worry, play this bingo game to get the money to pay for dinner.
But I saw that, and then I watched a Jenna Ortega movie that came out like last year that was kind of under the radar, and it's available on Hulu, and it's called American Carnage.
Oh, I think I heard about that one actually.
Yeah, it was just fine. Like, it didn't really entice me or anything. I was like, well, okay. It was like, they were it kind of related to like what was going on with the Donald Trump campaign and racists, and it had Eric Dane in it. And he was basically like, I'm just like blabbing because I literally watched this like last night because I had nothing to watch last night. So it had Eric Dane as the villain, and he basically owned like a fast food chain, and he was taking like people who are immigrated to America legally, and if the kids were here, they would either get deported or they would just have to work. And they worked at this nursing home where the nursing home was turning some of the kids that were supposed to be deported into old people. So then the old people, then once they died, they either like somehow like became like these mutated like creatures or zombies, or they would be turned into like the meat.
What?
It's the most.
That actually sounds oddly fascinating. I just did a quick browse through. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I had so many reactions that were just coming off it.
It's wild, and I was just like, this just showed up randomly.
Back up a second there. I want to go back to the part where they like turn the workers into old people. Like what?
Yeah, like there was this thing. Like there was like this little syringe thing, and they would take this thing and they would put it in the back of the person's neck. And that's how like the symptoms would start to go, and they would have to use it a couple times.
And they were doing
like
age
testing
rapidly.
Yeah, they would age like rapidly like that.
Okay.
And like I won't spoil it because there's like they do this like really cool kind of like makeup thing towards the end with Jenna and like the lead character at the film. So I was like, okay, that's kind of clever. I kind of like what they did there, but I kind of knew what was going to happen from the get-go. I was like, this person's going to be bad and turn against them. This person is this person's relative, and this person is this one. So I kind of knew what was going to happen. Kind of like it just felt like a beat for beat for that. But it's okay.
Interesting. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, if you want to check it out, it's on Hulu. And then I finished Secret Invasion before we recorded this podcast.
Sucked. Not a fan. I'm sorry. I gotta put it out there right now. Not a fan.
The only good episode was episode 4. I think it's in the entire series. I
don't remember hating 3, except for the problem that I already forgot what happened in 3. Like, this is only like 4 weeks ago, and I already forgot what happened. Actually, I don't mind 2, except for that was the moment where I'm like, oh, Rhodey. I think I figured it out like immediately. I'm like, oh, Rhodey's a Skrull. Okay, like after like here's the problem with that show. Were they expecting us to like question who was a Skrull or not? Because I think the number one instance in which that show failed, taking aside all like the Disney is from a story standpoint, I think the number one instance where that show failed is you never once questioned who was a Skrull and who wasn't. Like not once. Like after the first episode where they reveal Ross as a Skrull and then they kill Maria Hill at the end, there's never one instant where I'm immediately suspected, because the only other person that is revealed to be a Skrull is Rhodey that could like do any damage. Is Rhodey. Like how crazy would it have been if like President Ritson was a Skrull? How crazy would that have been? Like, you had Secret Invasion, one of the greatest Marvel comic runs ever. You had a chance to like actually make this into like a really crazy espionage spy show, and it's just at best, it's just another thing that's just generic and safe, and it's just
And people were praising it. I just thought,
I don't get it. I don't get it.
I just thought it was just meh. Like, I just like was like, okay, I liked the acting of like, Samuel L. Jackson, and I like Kingsley Bel-Air and
Kingsley Benadire, yeah, and Mendelsohn. I mean, come on. And the fact that they killed him off, like this is the last time we're gonna see Mendelsohn.
They killed off Maria Hill and they killed off Ben Mendelsohn. I was like, okay, I was
they
like,
kill off all the interesting people. And I think again, what's most telling is again just Disney showing their hand again is. In the last episode, the most obvious thing is when you have Olivia Colman meeting up with Emilia Clarke at the end, and I kid you not, like this is the exact quote they had where they're like, "Oh, don't mistake this for what it is. I'm going to use you, but the difference is that the Skrulls are actually going to benefit, and we're going to succeed where Fury and Talos failed." I'm like, of fucking course. I'm like, could you not be more obvious with showing your hand there, Disney? And not even that, but like it was setting up for like something that could have been really interesting. It's like they had like the brief flashback, like, oh, this is how the Skrulls infiltrated us so quickly with like the presumably other thousands of humans that they had infiltrated. But I'm like, so wait, so Fury's just fucking off now to go to this Kree thing, this Kree summit that's gonna that's gonna be the subject of the Marvels, I'm guessing, right? And then what? Like, where does this go from here? Like, there's still like an entire Skrull problem on Earth. I guarantee you, they're not gonna talk about that in Captain America, because then they're gonna be too focused on the fucking the Celestial Head and the Adamantium and setting up the X-Men with Deadpool 3. I'm like, so what? This whole Skrull thing, it just gets resolved in 6 episodes, and really mediocrely,
but then it's gonna involve the next Avengers film. Because Skrulls are obviously going to play effect in that. So this is just more setup for Kang Dynasty then? I believe so. This is like, to me now, I feel like Marvel has lost a structure for it and what they want to do. Because now we got Kang, we got the Skrulls, we got what's going on with X-Men, and I feel like there's no not even just that barely even scratched the surface. So you got Kang, you got the new Avengers team, right, with the street level thing. You got the X-Men, right, which will be set up with the whole Deadpool 3 Adamantium thing. You have the Kree and the Skrulls, which is the new cosmic thing, because now that they lost Gunn and Guardians, which was supposed to set up the whole cosmic thing, now we have the Skrulls, and that's going to be kind of our new link to the cosmic. We still have the multiverse stuff out there, right? That's still a thing, because Deadpool 3 is going to be the next big multiverse thing. You still have that. And then, and then you have all the other loose threads they've set up, where you still have Young Avengers, you still have Dark Dimension stuff, everything going on with Doctor Strange, you still have, what else? You still have Midnight Suns, which Moon Knight and now Daredevil is presumably going to be setting up for, So you have all of this different stuff still. And the problem, like I said, is that we've still been in the setup mode for so long that we still haven't seen like any resolution or fruition. And I think the issue was that they were originally going to plan on resolving that in Kang Dynasty when it was supposed to come out next year. But now that everything has been pushed, because remember, we still haven't even gotten Fantastic Four yet. We have no idea how that was going to factor in, Because the only movies that we were going to be set to get next year now were Deadpool 3, Captain America, and Thunderbolts. We were supposed to get Blade, which I'm presuming was going to be the next thing in the Midnight Suns arc. But now who knows when that's going to come out, if at all, No, you're on point with that. And I just wasn't a fan of Secret Invasion, and
It was fucking boring.
Yeah,
and I just want to acknowledge
good.
Olivia Colman. I did like her as well, and I liked the outfits that she wore. I thought.
Yeah, sure, but I mean, just fine. But like, A, that stuff has never mattered to me, and B, and thing, I care about the performance and how compelling the characters are, and B, it's like, you know what it was? It was like so a couple stats. This is the first Marvel show that we've gotten since 2022 She-Hulk. I'm not counting Werewolf by Night and the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special because those were one-off specials. So this is the first television show from Marvel we've gotten since 2022 She-Hulk, which I think everybody has kind of come around to and stated that is the single hands down worst thing that Marvel has ever made. And so like it was the whole thing of, it's like, okay, nothing could quite possibly be as bad as She-Hulk was, but once we like got a little bit of distance and traction from it, yeah, it was still, this is the most underwhelmed that I've been with a Marvel thing since She-Hulk. This is my second least favorite thing from them so far in this whole multiverse saga, which has mostly been crap, if I'm being completely frank. But
yeah, I feel like now that Gunn has left, I feel like a lot of the good stuff has basically evaporated at this point.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel like, what is the point now of Marvel?
The thing is that, and I've been saying this for a while now, is like they still have a chance to like make good stuff, because what I will say is that the issue, weirdly enough, is not a lot of their individual stuff, because their individual stuff still has potential. Like, if you take each project on an individual case-by-case basis, I still think that the only ones for me personally that have truly not worked are Black Widow and Shang-Chi. Those to me are the only ones that still have really not just worked out satisfyingly. But like, if you take each individual movie, I think it's still they're still enjoyable enough. I think the issue is the MCU as a whole has lost so much of its power, and the fact that they put so much emphasis on their TV shows, which, unlike the movies, the TV shows have been largely mediocre, and really, they've ranged from mediocre to not good. Like, the fact that the best TV show they put out, to me, is Hawkeye, should tell you exactly where they're at with their TV shows quality-wise. So that, to me, is where it is. And so the issue is not with the products, the issue is with the branding. And the fact that it has become so oversaturated, and the fact that they have become so ingrained in the culture. Like I said, the fact that they still have individual one-off successes. They had No Way Home, obviously, still in 2021, and Guardians 3 is probably their most positively received movie that they've had since then. You know, but I've enjoyed certain things from them. So I enjoyed Multiverse of Madness. I actually still think that Wakanda Forever was really good. But yeah, it's the brand overall, and the fact that as a solid, cohesive unit, which is really what people appreciated about the MCU. Because if you look at the Infinity Saga, there's actually quite few movies that you can actually like really watch and really enjoy on their own. It was all about like the cohesiveness and the fact that each thing was building up to the next thing. You know, they really don't have that anymore. Like each thing does not really build up to the next thing. You know, it really is just a series of individualized things. You know, so like for example, like in the Infinity Saga, I can really only say that 11 out of that, 22, 23 movies are like solid movies on their own. You know, it's really only 11. And I think that might even be that number might even be too high. But like, but like with the Multiverse Saga, if you take the TV shows out of it and you just look at the movies, like honestly, looking back, Eternals is not awful. And I think the worst thing about that movie is the casting. But that movie as a whole is actually not that bad, I don't think. Like, I don't have it ranked as low as certain other things. Just as well, Love and Thunder, while being a relentless, mediocre movie, in comparison to Ragnarok, I think Love and Thunder has a much more well-realized sense of identity in terms of just being this ridiculous, goofy farce. I think that just really was in heavy contrast to what people expected from Thor, not necessarily after Ragnarok, but after Infinity War and Endgame, and what they kind of wanted, you know, from Thor going forward. And as far as that goes, Love and Thunder did not deliver, you know. But like Multiverse of Madness, like had a lot of fun to be had. I think the worst thing about that movie is that it just felt too rushed and too fast. Wakanda Forever, as a stark polar opposite, I think took its time. And actually, in terms of like handling everything that movie had to handle, both on a plot standpoint and on a like you know, have to do the story of the first Black Panther movie, I think that movie did everything it needed to do and more. You know, I think that obviously Guardians 3 was a success. sorry, there was the only other to me big failure besides Black Widow and Shang-Chi was Ant-Man 3, because that one was just, again, it was just kind of unsatisfying. I don't think they handled the change in tone from the first two Ant-Mans well, as far as being zappy in the movie to really introduce Kang, because let's face it, they were trying to basically make that a Kang movie in the form of an Ant-Man movie. I think that's the only one that, other than Black Widow and Shang-Chi, that really didn't work for me. But all the movies, I have to say, I've enjoyed. I really have.
Well, that's good to hear. Because we haven't really talked to you about Marvel, so I'm really happy to hear your thoughts on it. But other than that, really quickly, I'm just going to shout out these other shows I'm watching. The Summer I Turned Pretty, the latest season, which I enjoy. If anybody wants to watch that, it's the better version of the Kissing Booth films.
Okay.
I will say that.
Did someone say Kissing Booth?
Yes.
Oh, God. Mac, you're
Your
still here.
favorite
Awesome.
franchise, Mac.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
No,
Kristen, next thing you know, you're going to be telling us you like the After movies.
No, I don't. I haven't even seen them. But
Okay,
no, The Summer
good.
I Turned Pretty, it's got a similar concept where the girl is like in love with like, not so much in love, but like not like the Kissing Booth is where, she's just in love with the brother. In Summer I Turned Pretty, she's kind of like torn between the two brothers. So does it sound like a Wallpat story? Probably, but it's a popular book series and I'm actually enjoying it. So there's that. And then I'm watching Claim to Fame because I like Kevin Jonas and Frankie Jonas. And then The After Party with my favorites, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, because I love the two of them and I love the new season. So that's what I'm watching.
Interesting. Yeah, After Party is something that Dustin the Duster Mason has been trying to get me to watch. I watched the first episode last year and could not get into it at all. Couldn't.
The other episodes are so good. I laughed so much because I love the elements what Phil Lord and Christopher Miller did, like done previously, and it's basically what they did with The After Party. And I just love their work that they do there. And Christopher Miller is mostly the showrunner for that and creator of that, but still, I still love the work and I still support them, even though I don't really do the stuff that they involve with Clone High.
Don't watch.
I'm pretty sure they were just executive producers on that. I'm pretty sure they were just collecting a check
it's got
for
their
that.
name attached to it, and
but you gotta differentiate.
Clone High?
But you gotta differentiate. Like, I'm not gonna blame Spielberg has produced a lot of shit that he was just executive producer on that he was just collecting a check for. I'm not blaming him for that. Like, you gotta differentiate. Like, you gotta look and see how creatively involved they were.
Okay.
In what? Clone High or your show?
Well, just in general, but I mean for Clone High, like, yeah, come
on.
No,
they made that. Yeah, that's their writers.
But they made the original though. That's what I'm saying though, right?
Yeah, and they made the new one.
Yeah, but did they really? Did they
really?
Did. That what?
Yeah, they wrote and they developed this. They developed this for 15 years
since the original.
Yeah, they just never had a chance because they weren't big back then in the original one, and then they kind of broke out with their own
Bill
stuff.
Lawrence. So then what happened with this new season then?
I'm going to assume it was probably a studio thing because there's a lot of just beats that just don't fit with this new story.
I wonder if they just took out like some of their old scripts and just said, this was supposed to be like for season 2, but that there it is now.
The same cast too. What the fuck?
I don't know. But yeah, that's what we've been watching. Let us know down in the comments below what you've been watching. And as we get into the topic, as we discuss Oppenheimer, I want to give a shout out to our Patreon. We have a Patreon back up and running for the M&K Productions Podcast. Link in the description. You can join and become a member of the channel for only $2 a month. I call it the middle road tier. If you sign up now, you get early releases for topic portions of our new podcast. So the Oppenheimer portion of this review will be up early to view or listen to, or if not, then the next one will be. You'll get monthly shout outs onto the Patreon, and we'll give you shout outs and everything. You can be the first to know upcoming episodes and news about the show, and you get the opportunity to choose topics every month for our Patreon chosen topic episode. So it's only $2 a month, and go in the description below to donate, and it's only $2 a month, and become a channel member, become part of the M&K Productions family. We'd love to have you.
Yay, Patreon!
Yeah, but with enough said, let's get right into the topic.
Oppenheimer.
Don't ever say that again.
Are we saying there's a chance that when we push that button, we destroy the world? Detonator charged. I don't know if we can be trusted with such a weapon. But I know the Nazis can't. 3, Oppenheimer.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now in the topic. We are doing our Barbieheimer episode, part 1. This is the Oppenheimer portion. So these two have probably seen Barbie already. I have not. I'm going to be, by the time this goes up, I would have been seeing it on my vacation. But I will be back in the next episode and talking about it. But for now, we're talking about Oppenheimer, the first new Christopher Nolan film in theaters in 3 years after the disaster that was Tenet. This is the first...
Hater.
Hater. Kristen is not like
you
Tenet.
haters.
But this is the first Nolan film without Warner Brothers. This is tied to Universal, and it follows the story of Robert Oppenheimer, who's considered the father of the atomic bomb, and everything going from his early life to the Manhattan Project to the Trinity Project and the after effects of it. And it stars Cillian Murphy as J. Robert Oppenheimer, with supporting castmates being Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr., Florence Pugh, Josh Hartnett, Casey Affleck, Rami Malek, Kenneth Branagh, and a lot of other people. So what Oppenheimer was going for is, this is Christopher Nolan. He says he's been wanting to do this for a while now, probably since like when he was starting out, but he did this in IMAX 65 millimeter film and 70 millimeter film, and of course, being the atomic bomb, everyone's like, okay, Nolan, you're going to use a CGI explosion. He's like, that's cute. Yeah, no, they actually legitimately made an not atomic bomb, but they made a bomb to simulate the Trinity Project explosion, which is pretty mental. So Jesus Christ. So this came out the same day as Barbie, and people are loving it. I have seen some negative things because people say it's too long or too overindulgent with its knowledge and everything like that. But too dialogue heavy, not really a lot happening. But I enjoyed it. I liked Oppenheimer.
Sounds like these people have never watched a Christopher Nolan movie.
I was gonna say,
yeah, honestly.
I think to sum up this movie as a whole. The Critical Drinker said that this is the best and the worst of Nolan, and I can agree with that, because Nolan has some very some tendencies he has. Like, I think sometimes his writing isn't the strongest, and it does have the impact of being a little too smart and be like, yeah, so we're talking fast and we're gonna see all these terminology and everything. So I think that some of this happens, but I enjoyed Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer was a great film. It has now become my favorite film of the year. It overtook John Wick 4. I didn't think nothing else would take John Wick 4, but Oppenheimer is a very good thought historical piece. It's a character study. I love it. But I'll start off with Kristen. Kristen, you wanted to know as to what each of us our first Christopher Nolan movie experience was, and then Oppenheimer stuff. So what was the first Christopher Nolan experience you had in theaters?
With me? Okay, so I wanted my first Christopher Nolan experience to be The Dark Knight Rises, but unfortunately my parents didn't see it because of the shooting that happened like back in 2012, and they didn't feel comfortable me seeing it, so I had to wait until Interstellar came out, and I don't like Interstellar. I love...
Oh my God, you guys are killing me here. Come on.
I love following. I love Memento. I even enjoy Insomnia, even Batman Begins, The Prestige, The Dark Knight, Inception. I love all those. And then like Interstellar hit, and I was just like, okay. And then Dunkirk, I was like, hell yes. That was my first time seeing a IMAX film for a Christopher Nolan movie, and I loved it so much. And then Tenet came out, and I was like, well, it was my first time back in the theater since COVID, and it was good. As I say that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you for at least like not collectively shitting on it.
No,
like everybody else did.
I will take Tenet over Interstellar any day.
My God. You're killing me here.
Come on. Then Oppenheimer, I was like, this is a masterpiece. If I could kiss it and worship it like Jesus. But I loved the film so much. I called it a masterpiece in my review. But before I get into that, Dom, what was your first Christopher Nolan theater experience?
Well, first I got to just sit back there and process just the lemon juice and salt that you just poured into that gaping wound. That was, I don't like Interstellar that much because, oh man, that's I'm not gonna lie.
Is that a burn? Is that a
let me put it this way. Before The Dark Knight is the greatest thing that Nolan has ever done and probably ever will do. But before I saw Oppenheimer, Interstellar was my number 2, like easily.
Wow.
I love that fucking movie. I actually rewatched it back in January. That is single-handedly, hands down, one of the top 5 greatest theater experiences of my life. And every single time I watch it, it's one of those movies that like it's tough to get an emotional beat out of me. Like I will purposely rewatch certain movies. I don't know. 2023 has been a weird year because it's been a year of like me rewatching certain movies that like I know will elicit a very strong emotional reaction for me. I kind of started this last year when I was doing like my first time watches with Chris for the channel. And so I was kind of doing that, trying to continue that this year. I rewatched the Michael Bay Transformers movies because I love those movies. And I'd already done my entire Nolan rewatch. I caught up on the 3 Nolan movies that I had yet to see, which were Following, Memento, and Insomnia back in 2020 when I was originally catching up on all of Nolan's movies for Tenet, because Tenet was famously going to be his 11th movie. So I'm like, Dunkirk is the perfect 10. Like I gotta be there for Nolan. There was actually another filmmaker who had that exact same scenario who also has a film coming out later this year. That's David Fincher, who I also caught up with all of his movies back in 2020. Him I had significantly more. But as far as my first Nolan movie that I ever saw in theaters, I have 2 Nolan first. My journey with Nolan really begins with Batman Begins, pun intended. Where obviously I'm a diehard Batman fan, but the whole thing is like I feel like the reason why I relate to Batman Begins so hard is because Batman Begins made me realize why I love Batman so much. Because I've been into Batman because of like the Justice League cartoons, and I never actually watched any of the Batman the animated series, but I actually had a comic book that's just on my shelf right there. I'm not gonna pull it out right now, but that basically I was this one comic. I didn't read a whole lot of comics when I was a kid, but every time I got one, I would like obsessively read through it, over and over and over again. And Batman was just, I always thought he was the coolest. I'm like, oh, he's the only guy that can operate with all these guys, and he doesn't have any powers, and he always wins. He's so cool. And so I was related to that. And then I saw Batman Begins, and it was everything I could have pictured and more. I saw it at the perfect age. I was 13. I watched it back to back with The Dark Knight. I remember we were doing some renovating of the basement. We were putting in some new TVs down there. We kind of celebrated by watching a bunch of movies. We watched all the Indiana Jones movies, and then we watched the first 2 Batman movies because I remember I had always wanted to watch them, but I was too young when they came out. I was 8 when Batman Begins came out, and then I was in middle school. I was in 6th grade. I was 11 when The Dark Knight came out. So I was definitely a little too young for those movies. But so I was finally the age, I was 13. They let us watch those movies, Batman Begins and Dark Knight back to back, and they were just they were magical experiences. They really were. They really like kind of set the template, and kind of from there, like I was just determined to watch. Like at first it was just Batman, because right after those, Dark Knight Rises comes out in theaters, and that's the first Nolan movie that I see in theaters. And from there it was just like an ongoing journey, because Dark Knight Rises is summer right after sophomore year of high school, which at that point was my best year of high school, still is. So it was like a perfect cap off to what already was. No. Sorry, I'm mistaken. That was summer of 2012. So my freshman year. So it was like the cap off to like my freshman year of high school, like the kickoff to sophomore year of high school, which was just a magical time. And then I saw every new Nolan movie subsequently after that in theaters, because Interstellar was senior year of high school. Then Dunkirk was summer in between my sophomore and junior years of high school when I left for college. And then Tenet was in the middle of COVID. I braved COVID and went to a theater when it came out in July of 2020. And in between then, I caught up on all the other ones. Obviously, I missed Inception in theaters, but I remember we watched that. I actually think that might have been the first Nolan movie that I watched right around the same time that I saw Batman Begins. But I remember not being as big a fan of it, and I didn't actually finish it until years later. And then I watched The Prestige actually while I was working for this warehouse back in 2018, and then I caught up on the other 3. So I've seen all of Nolan's movies now,
Right.
and needless to say, I am unfortunately, I don't know whether you regard this as, I am of the opinion that I am a true Nolan fanboy. To me, he has never made a bad movie. As far as the whole him perceived flaws, to me, that is only for people who don't quite understand or enjoy his movies. Because my whole thing is, I'm like, look, I am of the opinion that, like, when you get a filmmaker of that level, I'm like, look, these guys make movies a certain way. They're as well regarded as they are because they make movies a certain way. And unless I see a straight up bad movie from them, which as far as Nolan goes, I've still never seen a bad movie from him. Like, if we're talking Spielberg, yeah, Spielberg has made bad movies. If we're talking like other filmmakers who have made bad movies, yeah, okay, that's one thing. But Nolan has never made a bad movie to me.
I will admit this. Well, going off of what you just said, Nolan has weaker films. I don't think he's a bad filmmaker. I should reiterate that with
and like obviously
Interstellar and Tenet. I like don't hate them, but there are definitely like my weaker films. Like, are they the first ones I'm going to go to and show somebody? No, they're going to be like Dunkirk, the Dark Knight movies, Inception. Like, there's other movies I would show people first before I would show like Interstellar or Tenet.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like someone like even like Tarantino, who I think, to be honest, in my opinion, Tarantino has never had a bad movie. Because even the films
I also agree to that.
Right.
You films you
Another
perceive
example.
as the weakest is like the Hateful Eight,
Hateful Eight, Death Proof, and Kill Bill Volume 2, I think is what he says would be like his weakest ones.
Yeah.
Knowing he admits Kill Bill too, that's like huge. So yeah.
Well, I mean, he would. Well, the whole thing with Kill Bill 2, remember, is he regards Kill Bill as one movie, so it's the kind of the whole part 1, part 2 thing that really ruins that more than like the
right. Okay.
But like for them, they have like their movies are generally like really good. Like there's not a single bad. Like I remember they tried to say like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a bad film. I'm like, no, that's actually a really good film. That was
like my favorite film of like.
That's like one of his best ones too.
Yeah,
like
even with someone as Nolan, like for Tenet's flaws, I still think it's a good movie. I just think that there was just a lot of issues that you can point out with it compared to his other movies, but it's still for his style. I can't see any other director doing that. So I like Nolan, and I think with him it works for him, and it's like, and it is an acquired taste because a lot of people, they fell in love with Nolan because of Dark Knight. So with the Dark Knight, they're expecting that because once you have a peak like that, there's only so much you can go up higher without people expecting it. And the Dark Knight just said like he was proof of it. He said, I'm done with superhero movies. I want to do my own stuff, and if you want to be along for the ride, cool. If not, then oh well.
And there are true fans that are along for the ride. I mean, look how successful he just had this past weekend. We'll talk about the box office later.
Well, I mean,
but
yeah.
There's fans I
would regard myself as one of those true fans as well, because again, I have never, even the movies that you're right, like there are movies of his that are more accessible, I'll use that word, than others. Like I would probably, like you said, the Batman movies, Inception. It's interesting that you say Dunkirk though, because that's actually not one of the ones that I would say is probably one of his more accessible ones, but that might just be me. And I would throw Memento in there as well, because Memento at the end of the day,
the Prestige, because I also like that one. I feel like that one I've been able to show
that one I'd say is a little bit tougher, only because of the period piece elements, not because of the mystery. I like the movie's amazing, and the plot itself is very, very compelling, and it has one of the best twists
ever, I think.
But I think the only reason why I wouldn't recommend that one in terms of like getting into Nolan is because of the period elements versus Memento is just at the end of the day, if you take out like the plot elements, Memento is just a straight up thriller with an interesting bit to it, and like kind of the playing around, like Nolan's whole thing, right? He always loves playing around with different narratives. He loves playing around with time. Really, the only movie that he's done that doesn't play around with time in any capacity is The Dark Knight. I think that's the only one. I think every other one of his movies involves playing around with time in some capacity. Even Oppenheimer, which
it's a non-linear structure for Oppenheimer.
He loves playing around with that, right? He loves. And then the thing about it is, right, what's the other thing that people always complain about when it comes to Nolan? The fact that he always writes his dialogue in a manner. It's interesting because I think that it's weird. I don't think anybody else has ever picked up on this. I always equate him to like Aaron Sorkin, and that it's very wordy, it's very weighty, but he always talks like if you're on like the inside baseball club, it's like, yes, it's like catnip. Like I feel like I understand something that like nobody else does. And like, understand to a certain extent how that can be alienated, but for me, like I've never once had an issue. I think for me it always goes back to Inception, because I feel like Inception is where all of this started, because you didn't really hear any of these criticisms before Inception, because that was the point where like before Inception he was kind of just known for being the Batman director, like all of his other movies were kind of really not as well known. They were all like they
were more like if you were the nerd culture, like
they were regularly budgeted thrillers that if you were a film nerd you love, but they weren't known in big circles. And Inception is where he makes the big splash. Is like, okay, I'm not the Batman guy anymore, I'm Christopher Nolan. And that is where he took all of his sensibilities. And the thing about it, like I said, this is what also makes him so unique as a filmmaker. He took all of those stylings and sensibilities from when he was more of an indie, more of a mid-budget level director. And rather than abandoning them, which is what most directors do when they make it in the big time, he leaned into them. If anything, almost a little bit too much. And I know that for a lot of people that can be alienating, but because they look for like more of like the big budget 4-quadrant, things that are palatable to them. But for me, I'm like, I'm more props to it. I love when directors maintain their solid identity for years on end, because for me, like I said, I wasn't disappointed by any of his movies. Like if I could say one movie that like I wasn't the biggest fan of when it came out of the movies that he's done since Inception, it would probably be Dunkirk. But I did notice this switch after Inception where his movies, at least until Dunkirk, were kind of not well received, which I always thought was mind-boggling because, again, I love Dark Knight Rises. I love Interstellar. Like, really, I truly love those movies, and they bring out a very visceral, emotional reaction in me that very few other movies can. Dunkirk was one that I initially had a hard time getting into because I thought it was kind of a little bit robotic. I didn't understand the whole jumping around of narratives. I thought the whole movie kind of was made it a little bit alienating for me to get into the narrative. And it wasn't until I rewatched it years later that I'm like, oh no, this may not be one of my favorite Nolan movies, but this is just doing stuff on a filmmaking level that so few other movies are doing.
Yeah.
And then if we're just getting into Tenet, like, I'm sorry, I just have a fucking blast with Tenet. I'm like, I'm sorry, but everybody who like read into that movie way too seriously, I'm like, they read into that movie way too seriously. That movie is just a fucking blast. It is him fully unleashed doing a spy movie that is original, where he just gives where he is only employing the structure of the spy story in order to tell this gigantically stupid like movie that he can't have it be time travel. No, it's time inversion. He's like, no, I'm not going to have somebody jumping in a machine and coming out at a different point in time. I'm going to show them literally doing the movements and physically moving backwards through time. And he went for it. And for me, I rewind. That's another one. I just had a fucking blast watching it. That movie starts and it does not stop until the end. I love Tenet. I think I ranked that when I did my Nolan re-ranking. I think I ranked that like 7 or 6 behind Dark Knight Rises when 7 or no. What did I rank it? Shit, I already forgot my own ranks. Oh, no. I had a rank behind the Prestige. Now I remember now. But yeah. I love Tenet.
The first Nolan, because listen, I got into like a lot of movies late. When I watched Batman Begins, I thought it was really boring when I was a kid. But I got older and I love them now. But the first Christopher Nolan movie I ever saw in theater was Tenet.
That's fair enough. I mean,
and it was fine. It was okay. And like my dad's like, it was fine. And I was like, yeah, I can agree.
Man, I
mine.
Love that
if
movie.
I didn't see Interstellar in theaters, it would have been Dunkirk. So, everyone has a different theater going experience. The problem is I wanted to see a lot of Christopher Nolan movies, like when I was like getting into film a lot.
Yeah.
Like especially The Dark Knight Rises because of the shooting that happened, and then, you know, falling in love with the Dark Knight. I was like, nobody wants to see this with me, so I had to wait until it became available like on demand to watch it.
One wish is that I can go back in time to 2008 and watch The Dark Knight in theaters.
And I want to
really
go. When I was little, when I was going into, I think it had to be high school because Inception came out in 2010, and I was going to the movies a lot, but nobody wanted to see Inception with me. So whenever I would go into the theater, I used to poke my head and just figure out which part it was. And for like 5 minutes, I would watch it, and then I would get worried. I was worried I was going to get caught, so I would have to leave. I don't even remember at certain parts, but I remember seeing like so many unique moments. Like I remember even watching like the part where Joseph Gordon-Levitt is like going around in the hotel lobby scene. And I remember seeing like at one part in the theater, like Leo spitting the little what do they call that thing?
His little it's oh my god, it's not a dreidel. It's like a spinning. It's a spinning top.
Spinning top, yeah, that's what it's called. And I like remember seeing certain visual elements when I was younger in that theater for a short period of time, and I was just like, this man or whoever
there was a period of
directed.
time where every single trailer was trying to mock the Inception trailer. for like 5 years straight until The Force Awakens came out. That kind of set the new template for trailers.
Fun fact with Inception, my sister, I forgot what provider she had at the time. This was around 2011. Some phone companies, they'll give you like a free movie if you get a phone or a device. When we moved over to where we are now, we didn't have power because we moved during a snowstorm. We all watched Inception on her phone, like and it was a great experience. I was like, this is the first time it was like a year after the movie.
So you actually like didn't get overpowered by the sound.
No.
Yeah, it was a little tiny phone, but it's like that's like the equivalent of like I remember when you guys remember Game Boy Advance videos.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I wanted
There
those.
there was a kid in middle school. He brought in Shrek, and we all watched Shrek on his tiny little Game Boy SP.
Oh my
It
god,
was
that's
it
awesome.
was the only way to watch Shrek, and we were all like just chilling and jamming to it. It was actually really fun. It was
That's
just a tiny
cool.
screen. But yeah, anyway, Oppenheimer. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought it was a great film. There's a lot of aspects I liked about it. I think we should really discuss the award nominations, like Cillian
Well, hold on, I
Murphy.
haven't even given my thoughts on
Yeah,
Oppenheimer
give
yet.
your word. Yeah, well, Dom, I really want to know your thoughts.
The only last bit that I had on Nolan is my hottest take on Nolan, because I have to have one because he's my guy, is that Inception is his weakest movie. That's my hottest take. Yeah, I'm gonna say that. Yeah,
Not
I
even
think
Insomnia, because a lot of people
no,
rank
I love Insomnia.
I
Insomnia
know.
is great.
A lot of people,
And also
I
the fact
was
that
reading
Insomnia
rank Insomnia last, or even the following last.
well, following automatically kind of gets the spot because it's his feature film. It's his debut movie, and it's more of a student film than like a feature. And but Insomnia, I think it's extra prop because that's the only movie that he didn't write. So that almost doesn't feel like a Nolan movie. It feels more like a 90s thriller released in the early 2000s. Again, released the same year as David Fincher's Panic Room. It's really weird that those two have lined up. But aside from those two, Inception to me is the weakest of his movies because I think that's the only one where he employs a very familiar storytelling device to tell an amazing story that shows off some amazing technology. But to me, it's his least interesting set of characters that are only propped up by a set of gorgeous looking and really, really good actors. And it's his flimsiest, not the story, but the script. It's his flimsiest script to me. And I think the whole gimmick of the jumping through the different dream worlds, people said that shit was complicated. I'm like, anybody who's seen The Matrix and understands like different levels of reality should very easily be able to understand this. Like, this movie is not confusing in the slightest. So that to me was always that. But what I will say, that doesn't deter my enjoyment. Again, Nolan's never made a bad movie. I still like it. I just think it's his weakest movie. Okay. And I think, man, that Hans Zimmer score, there will just be times where I just need to like just fucking jam out and I just throw on Time, and oh my god, I just get lost in that fucking track. I love it.
I love it when the two of them are together. But I know he didn't work with him for this time for Oppenheimer.
Well, yeah, well, so that brings me in Oppenheimer a little bit. So obviously, you know, Hans Zimmer, the last movie that he composed for him was Dunkirk, and he's worked with Ludwig Göransson for Tenet, and like Ludwig, I don't know what happened, but like Ludwig is just introduced like a new level almost, you know, because like that Tenet score, I had never heard a score quite like that when I heard it. And now with Oppenheimer, man, I mean, I've been trying to formulate my thoughts because I wanted to watch this movie again, but I unfortunately just did not have the time. But I'm going to try to watch it again when I'm upstate this coming weekend. And oh my God, just like, if this is like the thing that I said, because I was telling this to my brother after the fact, we were just blown away. Just to put this in perspective, I haven't told anybody this. So I had a little bit of a hiccup because this movie was fucking sold out. Like every screening, it was like damn near impossible. So I was just trying to scoop up whatever seats I could because my brother was coming into the scene. We were going to do both the Barbie and the Oppenheimer thing. Both times, I was unable to get seats right next to my brother because that's how fucking packed both screenings were.
You gotta get those advance tickets.
Oppenheimer, I accidentally booked myself a wheelchair spot. So I had to sit on the floor, the hardwood floor for 3 straight hours. But this is how much I will show out for Nolan. I sat there for all 3 fucking hours. And that's how good that movie was. Because any other movie, I would have walked out and said, fuck this. I'll wait for another screener where I can actually sit in the chair.
I haven't seen or heard anybody do that since when I was little for the Hannah Montana movie.
Listen, for Nolan, I will show up because this man made a 3-hour-long movie that is his first movie since The Prestige, I would say, that involves little to, if not no action at all. This is all just people talking in rooms. And for this movie to be the box office sensation, the cultural sensation, the awards sensation, just the regular, like, I have friends who never in a million years would ever sit through a movie like this, who were actively anticipating and waiting for this movie. I mean, I'm like, this movie more than anything else finally demonstrates just how powerful Nolan has become. And I still have to go back and rewatch it. I still don't know if this is going to measure up as well, but for me, like I said, this is his apex. This is his Lone Star. This is his JFK. This is his oh my God, what's the word? This is his Schindler's List. You know, like Nolan to me has reached that level in his filmmaking career now where every single director kind of reaches that power, that period where they're like, okay, they're unstoppable. And technically Nolan really had that since the Batman movies. But like, really, I would say that ever since venturing out past Batman and doing like his original movies, you know, like if you counted like Inception, Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet, and now this is like, okay, like he's like, I'm Nolan now, bitch, more than anything else. And I feel like all the reception this
he's
movie
the king, right? Pretty
he's
much
the king. He really is. And this proves it more than anything, you know, like he had been trying to get like this kind of a reaction for a movie for a while. He hadn't quite got there. He came close with Dunkirk. He came the closest with Dunkirk. And I'd say that he's there with it now for sure. I made this prediction like a year ago when I first saw this, and now after seeing the movie, I am even more confident this is not only this is going to be his first win for director. I don't think anybody else is going to stand up to him. I really don't. Who else is there? Scorsese, Ridley Scott, Denis for Dune Part 2. Denis couldn't even get the nomination for Dune Part 1.
I think what's going to happen is we're going to see Christopher Nolan nominated. We'll see maybe Fincher nominated, maybe Denis, because this next Dune movie is going to have a lot more action, a lot more thrill to it, because the first Dune movie was just story and setting up for this world. So I feel like we could see a nomination for Denis, and then Scorsese, of course, because the Academy loves Scorsese. But I have a feeling not
necessarily Scorsese didn't get nominated for Silence. Remember that.
That's true, but then didn't he get nominated for
well, obviously he got nominated for Irishman, but the difference is that Irishman was a big splash movie. Silence was more of like a silent artsy movie. And Killers, I feel like, I mean, Killers is a weird one because Killers obviously has the star power with DiCaprio and De Niro, but this is kind of more so like getting into like the artsy fartsy, like away from like his Scorsese, like what he's known for, you know. So I
just have a feeling he's gonna get nominated.
Oh, well, I mean, he probably will, but I think also just because it's so much more slim pickings than it was.
Just because just given how the Academy is, they love their controversy and they love to stir the tea and the pot. They're gonna nominate Greta Gerwig for Barbie.
Really?
That's what I think. Okay. That's what I think at this point.
My hot take is that movie is only just going to go down as a blockbuster fan. I don't think that movie's going to get as many Oscar nominations as people.
I think it's going to get nominated for like. We'll worry about that next time, but
technicals for sure. But
yeah, technicals for sure. But like certain performances will get nominated for that film, but which we'll discuss next time. But I could see Nolan being nominated.
I mean, the irony is that if we're just talking about the Oscars, the irony is that they've been making this big push in order to get more diversity, you know, their diversity quotas in for the Academy. And that still didn't stop me from cackling with laughter when the 5 nominees last year for director were all male. Like I'm sorry, like that was hysterical to me because I'm like, that just shows like how full of shit the entire industry is when it comes to this stuff. But I will say that, like, in terms of shoehorning Greta in, I will say the box office of Barbie to me is the most compelling part of this whole thing. But what's it called? But as far as the but as far as, oh my God, I'm losing my train of thought. But as far as the rest of the Oscars are concerned, yeah, I mean, this is Nolan's easily, because I really like this year is just at an all-time low. Like aside from like them really trying to make an effort to reward more movies that people actually have watched, like December is at an all-time low. Like, what movies are opening in December?
Aquaman,
Wonka and Aquaman are the two biggest movies that are opening in December.
The Color Purple remake too.
Right. But then they might get put. We have to remember, y'all. They might get pushed back because of the strike.
That's true.
That's what we're getting debates about. So,
but I still think that they're going to come to the table and renegotiate in September, because the studios, I think, are going to be able to afford to last out the actor strike more past September. You know, because then that's really going to start eating into their profits margin. And like they were able to waylay them long enough for the summer because they had enough movies still in the template that they could release without having the stars around to promote them. But once they get into September, I think you're going to see the studios come to the table, because that chews into their profit margins. And really the only studio that has enough to really withstand and hold out the strike for, say, like the rest of the year, like they were originally projecting, is Netflix. They're the only ones, because they've got plenty of international programming. But the rest of these studios they literally cannot afford to not make a deal at this point. Because what are they going to do? Like push all their movies and have another like COVID season? They literally can't afford that, you know?
No one can, at least at this point, if you're working there, and you're losing out on a lot of jobs and they can't afford that. So moving on to more with award recognition. Let's talk performances in this film. Mac, you want to go off first?
Yes, I do believe that Hoyt Van, the cinematographer,
Hoyt Van Hoytema.
He's gonna get some praise because
I meant performances, not the cinematography.
Well, then I get to that. Well, yeah. Well, he's gonna get cinematography. Ludwig's probably gonna get some awards for the music, but with the casting, with the awards, Cillian Murphy definitely is going to be recognized because his performance is very great. It's a very layered performance because there's no good guys and there's no bad guys in this movie. There's just a lot of gray areas, and I think everyone does a great job of performing that. And I think with Cillian Murphy's portrayal as Oppenheimer, you really see him as like Oppenheimer's not a perfect guy. He is not a good guy. He's not even a terrible guy. He's just him, and it's just a very nuanced, layered performance with you actually like being invested in just seeing like this evolution of him from his younger days all the way to in college, when he came back to America, when he got initiated to the Manhattan Project, to the Trinity test, to the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like, you see that evolution, and with that, you kind of see the character progression of Cillian Murphy's performance. Because I read he ate 1 almond a day to lose weight. That's mental right there. But, you know, Cillian Murphy is a very fantastic actor, and to think that the first thing we ever saw him in was 28 weeks later, you go from 28 days later, to be considered to now being in Oscar like talks now for Oppenheimer. Like, that man has had a great career, and I'm glad he's getting the love he deserves now. And I even say that RDJ's performance, Robert Downey Jr. as Louis Strauss, needs to be talked about too as a supporting character for award recognition, because I liked his character as well too. He had layers and was very nuanced. Like, I think a lot of characters in this movie had layers, because even some of the scientists, funny enough, didn't really. I knew it was a Safdie as well as the scientists. Like, it's Benny Safdie.
I knew he was going to be in it.
I'm like, well, I recognized him immediately because I watched Good Times, so I knew it was him. But like, he was good.
Benny Safdie's a good fucking actor. I will say that.
He did good in his role. Matt Damon did good too. Like, the thing with Nolan is that he brings out the best out of all his actors. So when you're in a Nolan movie, even Josh Peck did good. I was so shocked to see Jack Quaid in this movie. Like, there's a lot of people who are like, you see me like, you're in this movie, like Rami Malek's in this movie, and didn't realize that Dan DeHaan was in this movie. I was like, wait a minute, I recognize that voice. Is that Green Goblin? Is that Andrew from Chronicle? Is that the guy from Valeria with
Valeria? Love Dane DeHaan.
Nolan pulled out the smorgasbord of like all of the character actors of like the last couple of years. Like I said, we haven't even mentioned Josh Hartnett, Alex Wolff for his 2 seconds of screen time. Josh Peck is the dude who actually Josh Peck got most of his screen time cut, and I think he even said that, but he's the dude who actually pushes the fucking button.
Yeah,
you know?
But it was a lot of good.
Devin Bostic, fucking Roderick from Roderick Rules. Come on,
and
man.
The fact that Nolan said he watched Roderick Rules is kind of the funniest thing. He's like,
that's the thing. Everyone is always shocked when it's like if Nolan reveals that he's like a real human being. Like, everyone was shocked when he's like, because like he didn't know who Harry Styles was when he cast him, but he was seen like at a fucking Travis Scott concert, which is hilarious. Still one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Yeah. I don't understand how he did not understand or comprehend his head of who Harry Styles was, but then yet listens to Travis Scott.
Because he's not a 15-year-old girl,
Scott,
that's why.
But he has kids!
He doesn't necessarily know what his kid's like.
Nolan's got some questionable music taste. If he likes Travis Scott, then.
Travis Scott did make him the song for Tenet, so that's probably why he went
the plan.
Yeah, so he used it for that, but
everyone didn't even actually use in the movie is the funniest part. It was just for the end credits.
It was just for promotional.
Well, that's what they did. That's what they did for Mission Impossible, because Kanye made like such a terrible song for Mission Impossible, and
who did?
Kanye.
When did he do the new Mission Impossible?
No, this is like back in the day. Like, I think Mission Impossible 3, and he made a song, and like they done it so terrible they put it at the end credits.
I thought it was like, if this is recent, right. that would have been all over the news.
No, that's why Tarantino said he's never going to use like that. He's just going to use.
Well, also, but there was the whole thing where Kanye claimed that Tarantino stole the idea for Django from him, and Tarantino's like, that didn't happen. That didn't happen at all.
But
he's like, no, because what happened was Kanye was like, Because Kanye claimed that he like stole it from them like the gold digger thing, and I think like Tarantino like visited the set for like the gold digger when they were shooting it, and that was it. But like yeah, it's like yeah, he's like yeah.
But yeah, the war season definitely going to be in touch for Oppenheimer, and I can't wait for that. Definitely Nolan. Like who was? I think Jeremy John said like it's not Nolan going for his Oscar because people are like, oh, this is him going. This is just him making a film.
No, because Nolan's not that type of a director. Also, he's not the director that goes for that.
This is Nolan like just wanting to make the film he wants. That could happen. Happen for him to be strong contender for best director. So that's what I think. So Nolan, Downey, and Murphy are all probably going to be in.
Don't rule out Emily Blunt as well, only because I feel like the supporting actress and actress races are both going to be unbearably weak this year, which is just like really.
Well, I mean, if it's that weak, they'll probably give it to Florence Pugh. Which fun fact, did not know that we were going to get Florence Pugh topless because I'm watching the movie and I'm like, okay. First of all, I didn't realize it was her until like I put two and two. I'm like, oh wait, no, she's in the movie too, and I'm like,
oh man. Dude, I'm telling you, 2023 has been an amazing year for seeing some of the most beautiful actresses ever just throw it all out there. Like between Jennifer Lawrence and No Hard Feelings, Scarlett Johansson in Asteroid City, and now Florence Pugh and Oppenheimer. I'm like, oh man, that's the trifecta right there. I'm like, I don't know how much else I can handle.
I saw this movie with my dad, so I felt kind of awkward seeing Florence Pugh.
Was it?
And I sat there.
You should have seen it in India where they put the fucking CGI dress over it.
Was it awkward for you, Kristen, the first time they showed it, or like the second time they were just sitting in the chair naked? Or
yeah, I was about to say, how about when Emily was visualizing?
It's like swallowing a tough pill. Like you can't please everybody.
Now that third time was wild. I was like,
my dad goes like, it's like those those conversations you have with your dad, and then you're sitting in the car, and you're driving back from the theater. If you watch a man carrying thing on YouTube, you would know what that I mean by that. But I was talking like that was so great. It was a masterpiece, blah 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 blah, like talking about all that great stuff with my dad, and then he goes, "Well, I could have done without the nudity," and I was like, "Well, did you enjoy it?" He goes, "Yeah." I was like, okay, then that's what matters.
I think the funniest part of that movie was when she's naked on top of him the first time and she has him read the I am become death thing while she starts making love to him. That was the only part where I'm like, I was doing my heart, like trying my hardest to not burst out laughing.
I was almost laughing. I was like, I was trying not to laugh out loud.
I'm like, what? You know what? I'm like, I can't be mad because I've been in situations like that before. Not to that extent, but like, I get it, you know?
It is funny though that they had because a lot of people who don't know the story of Oppenheimer, they've probably seen that video of him quoting that passage. So for them to just add it like that, I feel like the one's like, there you go. All right, let's move on.
I mean, in reality, I can kind of see where that happens because Luke read the book that this was based on, and he said that the section that Nolan adapted were like adapted to a T. So I'm like, okay, you know.
But that Oppenheimer is definitely going to be in the award season. But let's talk about the film.
Also, the fact that well, sorry to interrupt, but just a couple stats that I wanted to point out as well. If the people who get nominated for this acting wise get nominated, we're projecting Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., and Emily Blunt, possibly Florence Pugh. If the people who get nominated acting wise get nominated, this will be the first Nolan movie since The Dark Knight to have gotten any acting nomination, because he has not had a movie that has gotten any acting nomination since The Dark Knight with Ledger. And also this will be the first movie that the first script that Nolan will have done since Interstellar since Dark Knight Rises that is adapted. He has not done an adapted screenplay since then, because this is based off the book, who the author is I am currently forgetting. So just wanted to put those two little tidbits as well. So Nolan has a strong chance to win screenplay as well.
Kay Bird and Martin J. Sherwin. It's called American Prometheus.
Yes.
When they do have a good Prometheus quote in the beginning of the film, and I did like that as well. But the film itself, I thought it was very compelling. I am a very historical person, especially when it comes to the World War II and World War I type stuff, but mostly World War II. And I just like the history, how it goes of like, hey, there's like very technical and everything, and you kind of just see the perspective from him. And I think we're not going to spoil anything because this movie's still fresh by the time it comes out. But I mean, we all know that everyone knows who's listening to this. They do the test scene, which is the Trinity test on in July of 1945. And that scene, I'm going to just say that I think that might be one of my favorite scenes in the movies this year
Yes.
because with that, the build up to like what's happening, and if because I did a little research into it because I want to go into it blind, and I knew the Trinity Project, I knew about it and everything, and I'm like when I heard Trinity, I'm like oh okay. So then when it was actually counting down, you're like okay, Nolan didn't use any CGI for this explosion, so it's definitely going to be like a real boom, and like your heart starts to pump, and then when Josh Peck is like he's counting down, he's like 10, 9, your heart starts to pump. Like you're like, oh, okay, and then everyone's putting on the welder's glasses and the paint and everything, and then it gets to 0. And then one thing I love about this movie is that the audio is very well done because when you see the explosion, they're so far away, you just see the fireball, which is a very impressive fireball. I would say they did a good job with that.
It made me feel warm watching it. Like I was ready to burst out into a sweat, and I was like, oh my god, this is.
And then all of a sudden you're boom. I'm like, oh my god, like that was great. And then like they do that again with Cillian Murphy giving a speech and
the first ever accurate sound design for an explosion in a movie ever.
Yeah, just like you see it. That's great. Like, how did you guys feel when the boom happened like that?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, but the whole second hour at that point was building up to it, just from a tactical standpoint. And
like when at first it was so quiet at first, when it was like when they let it explode, it was like so silent in my theater, and then I just felt the shakingness like in my seat, and I was just like, oh my god, this is like so amazing. Like
I wish I saw this in D-Box. Imagine the rumble with the seats.
Oh my god, I don't even know how I feel like you would go ship off to space at that point.
I think that the biggest, I mean, if because we, in comparison to like why people are having this reaction to this one as opposed to the reaction that they have with the last couple of Nolan movies, is this is the first Nolan movie that's not spectacle based. There is spectacle in it, but it is not spectacle based. It is almost entirely a visceral character study is what it is. And Nolan has not done a movie like that in a very, very long time. I think The Prestige was really probably the last one that he did that was kind of came close to it. But and you can make an argument for the Batman movies as well, but this is the first character study that he's done in a long time. So I think that people related to that as well. Just kind of the first time that like somebody with Nolan's level of craft could just put you inside of a character's headspace. And like you're pretty much with Oppenheimer for the majority of this movie. There's a couple times where it leaves his perspective where it's on the Robert Downey Jr. character, the Louis Strauss character, who's established pretty early on as the antagonist of the movie. And some people were complaining about the twist where he's the one that like threw Oppenheimer to the wolves. And I'm like, I don't think that was ever supposed to be a twist. I think it was pretty obvious from minute one that he was going to be the one that was causing all this shit for him. But the movie is pretty viscerally in Oppenheimer's head. And the thing that I enjoyed so much about it is that Nolan kind of takes you through the journey with him. Like the each hour, this movie utilizes its 3-hour time frame very, very well. Where each hour is the one act of the story, where you have the first hour, which is kind of just, the establishing who he is as this young, like kind of genius that is not interested in any areas of conventional study. He's only interested in theory more than practical application as far as, and him bringing the quantum physics, the area of quantum mechanics to America and establishing it that way. And then into the second hour, you have the introduction of the military aspects and testing out the bomb and everything. And what I love is how, just from a storytelling perspective and a character arc perspective, how it takes you through the different stages of him in his genius area, and then him slowly having the realization of, oh, my genius is taking me too far. So much of the time you see that with movies where you're following the genius, and you have the moment where he realizes, oh, my, what have I done? My creation has gotten the better of me. But it never happens until the end. And it's always like the quick resolution before we say goodbye to the character at the end. This is the first instance where we see him realizing it and acknowledging it and accepting it in real time. Real time. But then the movie goes one step further, is where rather than have it just end with him realizing what he's created, the second hour takes you slowly through his realization in real time. And then it takes you one step further where the third hour is pretty much just him suffering for it, And even though he's not directly the cause of it, it is exterior forces that have caused it, he still in some capacity blames himself for it. And you just see such a significant transformation where this character is just carrying the literal weight of the world on his back. And how it ends with one of the probably saddest shots that I've seen. I can't even say that it's cynical. It's just sad, where you just have this close-up of him having this realization of, wow, I have given humanity the ultimate killing machine, where my ultimate pursuit for science. And it's the Jeff Goldblum quote from Jurassic Park fully realized, where it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
we were so busy wondering if we could, that we never stopped to worry about if we should. It's that, but like as a character study, it's fucking genius the way that it's done.
Depressing how it ends, because it's not a true happy ending like how most films, are told. It's just, fear now that's like, and just like realizations of what he's done, like what you just said.
Well, but
I like how we said we were going to spoil it, and we're just immediately spoiling
Well,
it.
I mean, we're not spoiling it. Because we're not. It's not spoilers though, because we're not talking about any specific plot elements that like really haven't already kind of been told by the trailer. And the other thing too, also, is that the thing about it is that I feel like the reason why people are relating to it so hard is because it's kind of like I said, like you guys said, Nolan has always been about very sciencey and explaining stuff. But the difference is that with all of his previous movies, I think the reason why people had such a hard time with it is because they were in spectacle-based movies. And so much of the time people aren't used to thinking that much in spectacle movies. They just want to sit back and enjoy the spectacle. Nothing wrong with that, but that to me is kind of why I've always thought that people had such a hard time relating to his more spectacle-based movies. But this one is a character study where people have more of a tolerance for this sort of subject matter when it comes to character studies like this. And so I think that's kind of where you see the perfect melding of all of those things, and as a result, he's able to get across like he's never not gotten through like mature subject matter. But to me, this is a much more mature movie than something like Tenet, than something like say Interstellar, than something like say Dunkirk. Where each one of those movies is like has a piece of what he's going for. Where Interstellar has the the existential crisis bits, and Dunkirk has the visceral, really in your face bits of like, oh wow, this feels really real, and the historical context. You just can't really relate to characters. And then Tenet just has the nonstop pulsating, going through all the way until the end. And this movie is like the perfect conglomeration of all three of those. It's like taking what made a piece of each of those previous three movies so good. And you have all of those on top of everything else that I just said. And that to me is why I think this is probably the reason why people are relating to this so much more than his last couple of installments.
Mac, you want to say anything else before we wrap up and discuss the box office? Because I think we touched on just about everything.
Pretty much, yeah. I did like the last shot. It's kind of like after the whole test, everything and stuff like that, and they talk about Hiroshima and Nagasaki bomb, like you really do see like the regret on his face, especially like the scene I wanted to mention was when he was giving the speech in the auditorium and he saw the flashes. And wasn't that Christopher Nolan's daughter that was shipping away the peel because he put his daughter in like one of the scenes, I think?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I liked it because he's talking, but it's silence, and all of a sudden he's just a big boom, because it's like after the bomb goes off, he starts having these kind of panic anxiety attacks, and it's simulating like a nuclear explosion because it's the silence and then it's the boom. And I think I like that part. And then when he was having his hearing, when he was getting stressed out, everything started vibrating, flashing. Like the whole of like, you really see like, because if you read the real story, like that man, when you saw the video, he did the interview talking about the I am become death, destroyer world, he looked broken. Like that was a very broken man who regretted ever even attempting or doing this. And I think by the end, that last shot after he talked to Albert Einstein, which shout out to Albert Einstein.
Yeah, that actor, Tom Conti, phenomenal. That is the definition of a rewatchable Dion Waiters scene-stealing performance, where he's in that movie for 3 scenes and steals every fucking scene he's in.
I want to see, like, I wish Oppenheimer was like, hey, Albert, I want to talk to you about the Trinity Initiative. You should come and join us. And we're like, nah, that's my dream. But like that last shot, I just think it's like, it's very like, that's damn, Killian. You just really want to do the Oscar. But I said in my review, give Oppenheimer a watch. Like I said, if you don't like Christopher Nolan, like you're not like a zealot or like a religious, like not like you're not dedicated to those movies, then maybe you might not like it. But if you do see it, I recommend seeing it in IMAX, because I feel like seeing it in a smaller theater just would not work.
As somebody who sat in a small theater, I take slight offense to that, but I do understand your sentiment. Yes, this movie is meant to be watched in IMAX and 70 millimeter.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody want to score it?
I give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah, 9.5 out of 10. No, sorry. Actually, well, I mean, I gave it a 5 out of 5. So yeah, it's like it's right there. It's the best movie I've seen so far this year. Easily.
Yeah, same. I think I have this tied. I think just about now with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 as being like my 2 favorites. Like if I couldn't pick one or the other right now. I loved both, but right now I think Oppenheimer might be my favorite. So yeah. Let us know what you guys thought of Oppenheimer in the comments down below. And did you do a double feature with Barbie? And if you enjoyed Oppenheimer, let us know. All right, Mac, let's move on to the box office.
All right. All right. So the box office for this past weekend at the time of recording, July 21st to 23rd. Number 10, we have No Hard Feelings, $71 million. Number 9, Transformers Rise of the Beast with $1.1 million. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse still kicking. Number 8 with $2.8 million. Number 7, Elemental with $5.7 million. Number 6 is Insidious, The Red Door, $6.6 million. Number 5 is Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny with $6.6 million. Number 4 is Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, $19.3 million. Sound of Freedom comes in at number 3 at $19.8 million. And of course, shocker, Oppenheimer's number 2, 82.4, and Barbie's number 1 with $162 million, which at the time of this recording, Barbie has grossed a worldwide total of $472,630,780 with a domestic gross of $214.1 million. Yeah. So it could make $1 billion worldwide because, well, it had a little bit of a drop going from Friday because it had a 32.2% drop, but seeing the drop it had from July 25th to today, the 26th of recording, it was only a 0.4% drop. So it's still growing. It's still like getting money now. I think it's the word of mouth and going. I feel like Barbie's gonna make $1 billion.
This is gonna be like the same effect what we had last year with Top Gun Maverick, where it's like the summer film.
Barbie and Top. Holy shit. But yeah, so that's the box office reports. And I can say it's summer we were eating really good this year. And I'm glad because God knows we needed it because there hasn't been. That's the thing when people are like the Barbie Oppenheimer thing. It's like, I think I'm glad that Nolan and them were like, this is really good for the box office because we haven't had two films like compete like this in a while. And because each year has been like only one film that's nominated a year. But at least this year, there's actually been a competition and that's good. There's variety again.
And I'll take it one step. Yeah, I was about to say I'll take it one step further. This is, and I've been talking about this on my podcast that this is the first move like blockbuster movie summer since summer of 2019. Really,
yeah.
But also we got to worry about this in September. Saw this joking around
oh yeah, Saw X baby, let's go.
Saw X and Paw Patrol. Saw Patrol.
Wait, is that September? I thought that was October.
No, that's September.
No, it got moved to September.
They must have moved it up because last I saw X wasn't until end of October.
They posted a picture of Tobin Bell, which he's back for some reason. So I don't know when the timeline. The timeline of Saw is completely just screwed up. They said
I watched Spiral back in 2021, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I ever want to watch another Saw movie ever again.
They were like, hey, we know you've been begging for it, so we're gonna release Saw X early, and I'm like, okay, but it's so weird because the timeline is like Saw 1, 2, he's alive, 3, he dies, and then the fourth, 5th, 6th, and 7, 8, 9, 8. No, okay, so Saw 3, 4, 5, 6. So Saw 7, he's dead, but it's all his games are like before he died. He was like clairvoyant, and then it was Hoffman, and then it was Lawrence Gordon, and then with Jigsaw, it was revealed that the guy in Jigsaw, which no one watched, he was there before Amanda, before all the accomplices. He was the first accomplice ever that we never found out about. And then with Spiral, it takes place in the same universe, and it's just one of the guys is using Jigsaw's tactics. And now Jigsaw's back. Somehow he's gonna be like, I faked my death the whole time. Now let's play a little game. Like, I love you, Tobin Bell, but how the hell are you alive? What is the timeline? Like, what are we doing? Like, is it going to be an origin story? Like, there's the only, like, what's the synopsis for Saw X? Like, hold up, Saw X. What's the damn synopsis? Because I don't know what the hell is going on. Saw X. Hoping for a miraculous cure, John Crable travels to Mexico for a risky experimental medical procedure, only to discover the entire operation is a scam to defraud the most vulnerable. Armed with a newfound purpose, the infamous serial killer uses deranged and ingenious traps to turn the tables on the con artist. Okay. And Shawnee Smith's back. So, you know, that could be fun as Amanda. So, and maybe it looks like it could be just the origin story. Like maybe like his first game, even before all the games in Mexico. Saw goes to Mexico.
Oh, man. Why are we still talking about Saw?
Let me discuss Saw, damn it.
I didn't know you were such a big fan of Saw.
I love Saw. The first 3 Saw movies I like. Saw 2 I like because we have a Wahlburger. I love Donnie Wahlberger because he's funny. Because there's a DVD in the first one where it's like, I think it's Off the Record, where they have like a news report, and they're like, hey, there was a news reporter film. He's like, hey, you know what's you police do? What brutality, huh? What brutality? I'm like, oh, you crazy Wahlberger. And I don't know. The first 3 movies were kind of like open and shut. Then they kind of got wild after that. And then I saw Jigsaw in theaters. I booed it, and then I saw Spiral, and I laughed at it because Chris Rock, he's like, I need everyone on this case. This is not cracking whacking.
Yeah, Chris Rock was trying to be serious in that, and somehow was funnier in that movie than any of his other actual comedies.
Because like when he talked, I just heard Marty. I'm like, oh no, Marty's stuck in the song, and then it didn't.
Why did they do the CG thing? You know how they did the thing with the Oscars where they had Oscar the Shark Slayer walking up and slapping Marty in the face? Why couldn't they do that for Spiral, but just made it Marty the zebra in that whole movie? That would have made that movie 1,000 times better.
And we talked about that movie on the podcast, and I told Christian, I said I hated it, and she loved it. And I told her the ending was dumb.
Yeah, Spiral was probably the worst movie I saw in 2021.
I'll be in my corner.
No. I will. No, I'll say that Spiral was not the worst one I saw in 2021.
What was your worst then from 2021?
Eternals.
No, I had Eternals at 10. I'm like, it wasn't as awful as some others. Like, wait, you had Eternals worse than Venom, Let There Be Carnage, which is objectively one of the worst superhero movies ever made.
I didn't watch.
Morbius topped it a year later.
I didn't watch Venom. I didn't watch Venom.
So you were actually intelligent. Okay, you know what? I can't fault you.
I did. I saw Venom.
I'm
Carnage.
I'm sorry.
And then Black Widow was worse too.
No, see, I still like Black Widow was at the very least cohesive.
Actually, no. The worst movie of 2021 was The American Murder with Chad McElmurray as Ted Bundy.
Yes! You know what was also pretty bad? I don't know if any of you guys saw that False Positive movie with Pierce Brosnan and Justin Bieber.
That was also very bad.
That is one of the, oh my God. I was like, A24 should be ashamed. That whole year really of 2021, with the exception of Red Rocket and Come On. I'm like, A24 should be ashamed of themselves. Oh my God.
Didn't they have what was it? Zola. And that was a miss. And then they had
Zola, miss, Green Knight, overrated, boring. Saint Maud fell asleep during False Positive, sucked. And they had one.
My worst movie for 2021 was Hazel.
Oh yeah.
I was never watching that. I was never watching that.
But that's it for this episode of the podcast. We want to thank Dom for joining us. Dom, where could the good folks find you?
Oh man, blast being on, guys. I you guys know I love coming on with you guys, and hopefully you guys will have me on for more after this. So you can follow me with everything going on at Official Talking TV Podcast across all platforms. Be sure to follow my personal socials as well at Movie Nerd Reviews. Talking TV on YouTube and Switch, and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, any places you can listen to podcasts as well.
Yeah, link in the description
Most excellent.
below. Yeah. So next episode we'll be going over our part 2. We'll be talking about Barbie because I will have seen it and I can give my 2 cents on it. Then after that we'll be going to a special episode talking about what I consider one of the greatest years in film history, and that's 2008 because we were eating good in 2008. Yeah. And then after that we'll have a few retro episodes for you until the strike's over. Until then, I've been Mac. This has been Kristen and our special guest Dom, and you've been listening to the M&K Productions Podcast. And we'll see you all in the next episode. Peace.
Bye.
Baby, you a star, I'm my only wish. I'm counting blue honeys, I'm too money. Like my little bitch, she too lovely. Yeah, hanging up and calling me right back. Baby, why you calling me like that? Yeah, getting high with the seat laid back. Baby, gon' relax, yeah. Hey, they don't know that.